I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. Hey guys, welcome back to the Drone Camps channel. I'm Justin Davis, and today I have another awesome review for you guys. We're gonna go outside and fly this new DIATONE M515 for you. We're gonna fly at line of sight, and we're gonna do some FPV for you, but we're also gonna test it out on several different types of batteries because I'm not really sure which battery I wanna fly on this one. It does come with a little XT30 micro brushless style connector, but it does have micro brushless style components on here, even though it's swinging 5-inch props. And I'm gonna use some of the same props I used on my Kingkong GT200 series, and these are very similar quads. Both are ultralights. They're sub 200 grams without the battery, but these have different specs on here, and we'll talk about both of these quads in this review, and I'll show you a little bit of flying footage of both. But the DIATONE is striving to be a little bit lighter than the Kingkong 200 GT, so I'm very interested to see how that power to weight ratio works out in the air, line of sight, and with FPV. So we're going to take a look at the new DIATONE M515 on the bench. We're going to talk about different batteries that I'm going to try out. We're going to show you the different weights between the two quads, and then we're going to go out and do some line of sight flying first, and after that we'll do some FPV. As well, be sure to click on my Patreon link below and support my efforts in making videos for you guys, because it really does mean a lot, and I'm trying to get that going. We're going to give away a Futon 2 in July, and that's going to be pretty cool for somebody out there. It's going to be bind and fly with an Frsky receiver shipped to your door. Of course, the winner does pay shipping on that, but let's go ahead and take a look at the DIATONE M515. Okay, so now we have this baby on the bench, and you know what? I love ultralights. This Kingkong 200 GT that came out, it came so far from left field. It was like the opposite trend of what all the other companies were doing. Right now they're doing these huge 2207 motors, 2306s, and they suck a lot of power, and 6S seems to be a new trend as well that everybody's doing, and there's big debate whether you should go 4S or 6S. But aside from all of that, this is kind of a different trend and different direction. Pack as much power as you can on the frame and make it as light as possible using micro brushless type components and flight controllers and 4-in-1 ESCs. And this is interesting because DIATONE has seemed to made their own version of an ultralight with 1806s on there, and there's two different versions of this quad out there. Right now there's the replaceable arm version, which I saw another reviewer got, and it seems that I've got the unibody version, True X frame here, so I'm completely cool with the unibody, and I think the unibody is going to be the lighter way to go without all the extra hardware on there. So if you really want a true ultralight, the way to do it is with a unibody style frame. It just reduces a lot of weight in the frame, and any hardware you can shed off of the frame is just going to give you a few extra lighter grams, and they also use smaller hardware on the motors as well. These aren't your typical M3 screws on the bottom here, so very interesting that they did that. And also on their motors, they shed off the bottom. You can see the Kingkong 200 GT has that bottom on there, and the DIATONE Sunny Sky 1806 motors don't have that, but they're both exactly the same spec. They're 1806 2500 kV. So here's the LDRC motor right there on the right, and the Sunny Sky on the left. And they both have these super ultralight aluminum lock nuts on there. And I'm gonna test out the same exact props that I had on my Kingkong 200 GT. Those are the Cyclone props by Dalprop, and the numbers on those are actually 50/40. So if you're looking to run these, this is a good tri-prop for freestyle. If you want to do racing, I always suggest using a 2-blade prop, and this is a Flash 5152s that came with it. These are the clear props from GemFan, and these are pretty nice props. They are extremely fast, and maybe just a little more efficient than using a tri-prop. Whenever you use a tri-prop, you're going to get a better boost and power and float, but you're also going to suck more energy out of the battery while you're flying tri-props. The M515 does come as a plug and play, so you're going to have to add your own receiver, whatever that's going to be, a DSMX, Futaba, or an Frsky receiver. It does have a little cable already sticking out the side that comes with this little guy right here, and all I did was just snip that off and go ahead and solder my receiver straight to that wire. So there's no big deal there. If you have this type of plug on your receiver, you could just plug it in and bind up your quad. But also in the box you get some extra long hardware for the stack in there in case you break one of those, 2 extra plastic nuts. You get an extra XT30 connector, you get an extra rubber grip for the bottom of the quad for your battery, and you get an extra harness on the bottom, and this just plugs from the ESC up to the flight controller for your motor signal wire. wires, and you get a beeper as well that's just going to plug right into that little power cable right there. And this is the way you power your beeper right here. And this looks like it would be located up front. There's no LEDs on this, so it's just strictly for a beeper. But today I'm not going to run this because it's going to be extra weight, and even that is a couple grams, so I'm going to keep that off the quad. And you do have a low voltage alarm on here, or a disconnect from the receiver alarm. So if this quad becomes disconnected from my receiver, or I turn my radio off, or I lose it out in the field, the ESCs will start beeping. So I'm just gonna omit the beeper for now. And you also get a set of these tri-props in here from Jim Fan. These are actually 50-42 tri-blade props. And while these look pretty cool, they are just a little bit heavier in weight than the Dow Prop Cyclones. So I'm going to go even lighter by running the Dow Prop Cyclones. I think those will fly a little bit better, and they actually have a little thinner cord toward the center, which I think is going to be a little more efficient than this wider Jim Fan cord right here on this particular blade. It's just a little bit wider, so that means we're going to draw a little more power out of the battery, and I'm looking for efficiency on this design, so that's what we're going to do here today. So let's go ahead and weigh the M515 real quick. We'll turn on the scale and set this on there for a dry weight, no battery. And it looks like 180.9 grams. That's extremely light without the battery. And let's just set the, if I can, set the Nanotech 4S 850 on there with the quad itself and give you a weight there. 281 grams, so under 300 grams with a 4S 850. That's pretty good. Now let's take the Kingkong 200 GT, the competitor quad to this one, and we'll go ahead and weigh that. And that one's a little heavier at 201.2.3 grams. So that's pretty competitive. The M515 is quite a bit lighter. And we're over 300 grams with the 4S 850 for the Kingkong 200 GT, 301.5 grams. So the clear winner for the ultralight weight contest between the Kingkong 200 GT and the Diatone M515 is obviously the M515 by about 20 grams. So a very, very nice low profile design on the front, and it does look like it has the same components, the same center plate as that original GT series quad that we reviewed on the channel a little bit earlier last month. And they do have something new on here. I noticed right away they have two new things on here aside from using the same center stack and the same VTX. It's that TBS Unify, the Fury F4 flight controller, and that 25 amp ESC with D-Shot 600. They have a lollipop antenna on the back from Foxeer. So that's a right-hand circular polarized antenna. You can see that the arrows go around this direction, and that's super nice that they do include that. I did push it down a little bit because it was hanging out the back quite a bit, and if it bends down, it was actually going to hit the props. So you want to make sure that you secure this as best you can. You can't use a zip tie on this one unless you run some electrical tape around it or something, because you might be able to disconnect it from the Unify and do it that way and maybe stand it up a little more. But I think it's going to be just fine there. We're going to leave it there for my testing. Now in the very front, you can see that there is that purple camera, and the 200 GT uses that micro swift here. That's the Runcam micro swift. It's orange. We're just going to look on the back of that here. It's the micro swift 2, and this one is purple, and I had gotten a copy of that from Runcam, and I've tested that camera before. It's pretty good. It is adjustable. You do not get any type of controller for that to connect to the back of the camera. So if you have an extra Runcam controller sitting around, at least I didn't in my kit, you're going to need this cable right here to plug into the other side of the harness back behind the camera and go in and take the voltage and any pilot display off of this camera. So mine came from Diatone with two OSDs showing up on the camera. The Runcam OSD has OSD by itself, and then Betaflight OSD. So they were both on there at the same time. So if that happens to you, borrow one of these from a buddy, or buy one online so you can take all that information off there. But we can go into Betaflight. We do have Betaflight 3.3 on here with OSD, like I was saying. You also have two capacitors on this, so I'm expecting that the video will be quite clean. We have one capacitor on the flight controller, and we have another capacitor on the VTX there. So you see that one right there, that one goes to the flight controller, and this one up on the very top is cleaning up the video coming from your VTX to your goggles. So that's pretty nice. And also guys, the carbon fiber on here looks top grade carbon fiber. It does look really, really clean, and it doesn't feel super edgy in my hands. It's been polished, and it does have beveled edges along the body of this unibody. So it's a pretty nice grade carbon fiber. They did actually have their logo sort of engraved on the bottom here, which is super cool. I have that covered up with my piece of Velcro. I always run Velcro instead of running this stuff. A lot of times if I have a hard crash, my battery ejects, and if you don't have your battery cable zip tied to the arm, you're going to rip this right off here and pull the tabs off the ESC. So be sure to zip tie down your battery cable. They do give you extra zip ties in the box, so they give you like 6 super long zip ties, and these are 2 of them right here that I have my XM Plus antennas coming off the top. And like I was showing you that harness before that comes along, that extra harness that comes in the pack, that little connector right there that's kind of sticking out just behind the camera, that is for plugging into your buzzer. So it would be pretty easy to just plug in this buzzer and stash it behind the camera, and put a little piece of VHB in between where those 2 solder points are. You don't want that connecting with your carbon fiber, because that would be a bad thing. You'll short some stuff out. Now we're going to go out to the field in just a minute. We're going to exclusively try out the 4S 850 milliamp battery today. I think that's probably going to be the clear winner for this particular setup. It does seem a little bit small for a 5-inch race quad, but we're only running 1806s on here. We're not running huge motors like 2205s, 2206, or 2207s. The next battery up that I'm going to try is that 4S 1000 milliamp, and that's quite a bit bigger. So the weight on the 4S 850, and I'll just zero that out and weigh that for you, that's 100 grams flat right there. And I normally don't run these Nanotechs, but I don't have any tattoos right now to run. This will be a little bit better than the Nanotechs if you guys are watching, listening about batteries. And that's 144.1 grams for the 1000 milliamp. And we're also going to try the traditional 4S 1300. I have a graphene here from Lumineer, and that one's 170 grams. 170.9 grams. So that's going to add a lot of extra weight, and I think that a 4S 1300 is going to make it fly kind of heavy. It's going to fly like a hog, but I'm going to try it anyway for you guys. So I'll let you know which battery works the best. All right guys, so we're going to try out this DIATONE M515. We're going to test it out on a 4S 1000 milliamp battery. I have a little converter over here on the side from an XT60 to XT30. We'll see how it does in the hover test. We'll do some punch outs, and we'll play around with the acro and the rates. I have the rates set to the default of 7.0. So we're gonna fly it stock pretty much the way it came, and then I'll play around with the PIDs a little bit later. If I get a good PID tune, I will share it with you guys in the links down below. You can add it into your quad. So here we go. Pretty light as I was expecting. You know, the 4S 1000 feels pretty good actually. Nice. Way out there. It's pretty sick. Not bad. Wow. Holy crap. Holy crap. So power to weight ratio feels extremely good. The tune on it sounds pretty quiet. I don't hear any vibrations. Let's get it a little closer. Check out the hover. Holy ish. This thing gets far away from you really quickly. Little rainbow action. It's gonna be a good freestyle machine for sure. 1806s, smaller than most traditional race motors and multi-GP, but I think this is going to be a pretty good competitor on a small course. I don't know about the really big courses, if this will be the right choice or not, but it'll be a lot of fun to freestyle this one too. And it's really, really windy today, so the wind is not affecting the quad, which is great. Gyro's not freaking out. So it looks like everything's ready to go for some FPV, guys. Let's go ahead and set it down, and let's get into some FPV. Here we go. All right, guys, so hopefully you enjoyed that little FPV flight test, and line of sight flight test came out pretty good. I like the power a lot with the 4S1000. That seems like probably the sweet spot for this choice of batteries right here. The 850 seemed to sag a whole lot, and it might be my older nanotech here. These batteries kind of suck anyway, so I would go with the Tattoo 4S 850s for this particular quad. If you're gonna fly something this small and you want that lightweight, the lightest weight you can get, this is probably gonna be the least amount of flight time too. Maybe, I mean, I was getting 1.5 to 2 minutes with this battery, and a lot of times it just couldn't handle the amp draw coming from the motors. So I was pushing it pretty hard. So what I would recommend for guys is using the 4S 1000 milliamp. This is one of those Turnigy graphene batteries, and this is held up pretty well. It hasn't swelled at all. So this is probably the best choice for this particular quad. Now, I did also test for you guys the 4S 1300, and that battery, it was very unimpressive, and it wasn't the battery's fault, but I crashed into the sign at the very end, and that was pretty much the end of my testing for today. But good durability test for this quad. Speaking of that, because it didn't break, and I really slammed that pole hard. It has a little bit of wear and tear on the end. On that front right motor, just kept taking hits today, and you can see that cyclone prop is pretty much done. I'm gonna pull that off there, but everything else on the quad held up and survived. The motor wires moved around quite a bit, so I probably suggest putting like 3 zip ties on those arms. They are really skinny. Whenever you do a hard hit, sometimes they do shift around in there. So those motor wires are actually pretty long. Now, if you want to run any type of XT60 connector, you can do something like this. You can make a little connector from XT60 to XT30 just with a simple piece of wire, and that works out pretty well for running your larger batteries. So you don't have to put little tiny XT30 connectors on these huge batteries. These wires are pretty beastie, and they're kind of hard to solder up to the smaller XT30s. So anyway, guys, that's the end of this review, and I'm gonna go ahead and give it a star rating of I would say like we're due like 4.5 out of 5. It's actually a pretty decent quad and a really interesting design with kind of a new twist on power to weight ratio, because hey, it's an ultralight. It's around 180 grams dry weight, and just a little over 200 with the battery on there. So definitely my recommendation is the 4S 1000. You'll have the best experience with that particular battery. So I appreciate you guys watching this review, and as always, please do subscribe on the channel. I'm Justin Davis. I'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.